Welcome back to Trader UK. Adam here with another gem of a company for you guys to take a look at in an emerging industry set to disrupt a $5 trillion a year market. The product addresses multiple issues at the same time, from climate change to animal cruelty, even helping to prevent future health pandemics. Can you guess what it is yet? No? Well, don't worry, because I wasn't aware of this company until a few weeks ago when I started to do my research. The company is called Agronomics. Agronomics. Stick with me today and I'll run through what it is they do and why I'm absolutely loading the boat on this one. Now, Agronomics, this is their website. They are a company who specialize in clean meats and clean materials and other clean foods. And you might be thinking, especially from the website, along the lines of Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. Not exactly. You can see here investing in cellular agriculture and cultivated meat. That's their primary focus, that cultivated meat, which is basically meat grown without the animal. So test tube or lab grown meat. And with COP26 underway at the moment, actually, we know that these certain industries are really in the spotlight due to, well, climate change, first of all, and farming is definitely in the firing line there, especially farming of animals, I would say. Large land use, lots of water use. The cattle often produce a lot of greenhouse gases as well. So this is an industry, animal farming, that is really in the firing line and under a lot of pressure from a climate perspective. On top of that, though, we've got the animal rights issues to look at. And I'm not just talking about the killing of the animals, of course, but I think for a lot of people, even people that like to eat a lot of meat, quite often the way that animals are kept on industrial scale farms, people are not okay with that. It doesn't sit well with a lot of people. So this is definitely a product and a company that looks to address a lot of those issues. So the whole idea here is that the cells are taken from healthy animals in a way that doesn't harm them, although we'll take another look at that in a minute. There's a little bit more to it. And then they are grown in lab conditions. Obviously, the land use is very low when compared to traditional animal farming. So is the water use. There's no need for antibiotics with the animals either. At the moment, the vast majority of all the antibiotics that we use are used in animal farming. So that's another positive for this cultivated meat. And what you end up with after all of this is essentially the same product, not a similar product, the same product. One of their taglines is not similar to meat, it is meat. Before I do go any further, if I could ask you to like the video for me, that would be very helpful, and it really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Of course, if you like similar content to this, if you like finding out about new companies, maybe companies that you wouldn't have heard of otherwise, then don't forget to subscribe for similar content. Also, if you know of any other companies in this field, publicly traded companies, do let me know in the comments as well. Now, this is actually an industry that I've wanted to get exposure to for a while now. I saw the stories of the £250,000 lab burger. This is one of the articles. Back in 2013 this came about. Of course, at that point, you know, the technology is quite a way off, you know, price wise, and it's going to take a long time for them to bring the cost down to make it a viable commercial product. But according to this, the same company have now driven down the price of that £250,000 burger to just $11.56, or about £10 per burger. Now, before we do get too carried away, I think we're still 3 to 5 years away from real commercialization on this. Obviously, they need to address the cost. People aren't going to pay £10 a burger on the supermarket shelves when they can get real meat a lot cheaper than that. But you can also see, I've highlighted here, it says at the moment we are limited to tiny little pieces of meat that are then squished together into burger-like patties. So they can't grow this meat in substantial quantities. They couldn't grow steak, for example, not at the moment anyway, but that will come over time. So that's why you see the products they offer as more like burger patties. And then it also says, which is probably the biggest issue for me, another challenge is that the meat burgers need fetal bovine serum to grow. This is taken from the blood of a cow fetus. So the entire lab-grown burger industry is still dependent on slaughtering animals. Lab-grown meat is proposed as a more environmentally friendly and ethical alternative to industrialized farming at a time when global food demands are increasing dramatically. So of course, all of that true, but the fact that it relies on fetal bovine serum to grow is a bit of a problem. I assume it's something that's going to be addressed over time, but it's already quite a controversial subject, this one. For me, no. If you offer me the same product now at a similar price, I would take it. But for a lot of people, they will need quite a bit of convincing to switch across from traditional meat. So you feel like for this product to really launch and hit the ground running, it needs to be perfect. It can't have any flaws. People can't question it at all. So they have a little bit of work to do. But I think 3 to 5 years from real commercialization. Now, the reason that I want exposure to this company now, or to this industry now, is because the size of the addressable market we're looking at, and also what Agronomics do and how they do it. Jim Mellon, who is a co-founder of this company, puts the overall market at 5 trillion US dollars, which is huge, but I would assume that he's talking about agriculture, global agriculture in general there. I would say a more addressable or directly addressable market for them would be the meat market. That seems to be their primary focus, although they also focus on leather, they focus on seafood as well. So it's a lot bigger than this, but if you just look at the meat market, that's a $1 trillion a year global market. So either way, what we have is a market that, or an industry that is under a lot of pressure at the moment, set for big disruption. We've seen companies like Oatly, we've seen Beyond Meat, we've seen Impossible Foods start to take market share from the meat industry and the wider agriculture industry as well. For me, this has much bigger potential because it's not going to be a niche market. This is going to be a replacement product or replacement market for an entire industry. And I'm not going to say that's going to be now. It's not going to happen now. It could be 20 years' time. It could be 100 years' time before animal farming is really phased out altogether anyway, but it will happen. I think it's not efficient enough, and the transition in some form will start to happen in the coming years, and that's why I want exposure to this company and what they do right now. For me, the transition to EVs and all the battery technology that goes along with it is probably the biggest investing opportunity that we'll see in my lifetime, because that transition is being forced. It's being forced by the government. But if that is the number one opportunity, then this could be a close second, in my opinion. I don't think that transition will be forced certainly anytime soon. But even without that, there are plenty of people out there like myself who would switch across to this product if it were on the supermarket shelves and if it were economically viable. I probably would have got in on this sooner if I could have. I don't mind investing at an early stage, but the problem is most, if not all, of the breakout companies in this kind of space are unlisted companies. So unless you're a venture capitalist with a few million to spare, then it's quite hard to get exposure to this kind of industry. Tyson Foods are also working on a similar kind of project, but that's not really a company that I want in my portfolio, not a company that I want exposure to. I feel like this new industry will be disrupting Tyson Foods and their industry. So they almost have to have that exposure as well, just to maintain their market share. It's a little bit like investing in traditional legacy automakers whilst making the switch to EVs. There's much more value in your pure EV plays that we're seeing with Tesla and Lucid than there are in your traditional automakers like GM that are also making that switch across. So similar in a few ways. Like I said, though, one of the difficulties with investing in an emerging industry is that most of the exciting companies out there are unlisted companies. You can't usually buy shares on a stock exchange until those companies get a little bit larger anyway. The other big problem when the technology is some way off is trying to pick that winning horse. Who's going to win the race, or even a horse that's going to finish the race, to be honest, because a lot of these smaller companies, a lot of them will drift off into doing something else and they won't actually make it to the finish line. They won't get their product to market. So trying to find the winner or a finishing horse is actually quite challenging. And one of the reasons why I love Agronomics so much and what they're doing is because you're not investing in one publicly traded company. You're actually buying into a number of unlisted companies. And you can see here, these are some of the companies that Agronomics has gone and invested in on our behalf, essentially. Agronomics is just an investment vehicle. They invest in the smaller unlisted companies in that clean meat sector, clean seafood sector, clean leather, and all those associated products. All of the products that you expect to see associated with animals and animal farming. So Agronomics have identified that there are about 70 companies operating worldwide in this new industry, and Agronomics have gone and invested in 14 or 15 of these companies so far, and they're looking to invest in more and do a few startups of their own, I believe. So you're getting exposure to a large portion of the entire market. I don't know what that is, 15 of 70 is what, more than 20%. So Agronomics is almost operating like a bit of an ETF for you. Gives you a lot of distribution across the industry there. Here we have some of the companies that Agronomics have invested in, and these were the weightings as of the end of 2020. Jim has already suggested that some of these companies, I'm not too sure which ones, will likely go public in their own right in the not so distant future. And in fairness, if you go and take a look at Jim Mellon and what he does, what his background is, he has taken companies public before, I think in the UK and in the US as well. And they had a focus on biotech previously. So this is actually quite fitting for what he's done. Now, although I do think this is an early stage industry, a number of these companies do actually have products that will be coming to market soon. So Musa Meats, for example, who you can see here, Musa Meat. This is the company who came up with a £250,000 burger back in 2013. They plan to have commercial products launched as soon as 2023. So for the moment, this is a company who are well positioned to benefit from the increasing pressure being put on animal farming and the wider industry. And I suspect that pressure will continue to build over the next few years and just as time goes on, driving up the share price of Agronomics because they'll feel the tailwinds of that. It's also a company that will realize a lot of value when some of these companies that they have invested go public in their own right. That's what's going to release a lot of value here. And that's why I want to be holding Agronomics. They are absolutely in the right place at the right time, and they are set to benefit from that, in my opinion. As always, I would be interested to hear your opinion. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments on this one. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time.